Media and telecommunications policy is at the nexus of our world. Few of us these days in the United States and even elsewhere in the world walk around without a mobile phone in their pocket. The digitization of our life is transforming how we live, work, and engage politically. Now, those devices that we rely on so readily are regulated in some fashion. In the United States, it's quite properly, the regulations are limited appropriately, as I said, by the First Amendment, but the access to the airwaves, the way in which we get to use those devices, you may have read about the questions of net neutrality and the open internet. Those are really fiercely debated questions in DC. Telecommunications and media policy interacts very closely with politics, and what I think we have to think about in the future is a possibilities of participation. And if we think about participation in politics as being partially through digital devices, we need to think about equitable access to the internet and meaningful access to broadband. We need to think about how rural communities that are currently getting slower or very limited access to the internet can interact. We can now communicate far more with the politicians than they can ever really want to hear from us. And we've got to explore how that can be meaningful, both in terms of the mechanisms through which we do it. A million emails is only so useful, and how they respond to us. Spam emails that are untailored are also not particularly useful. There's a great opportunity to remake participation in this decade. With the world of media in the flux that it is, there's a lot that can be done and many conversations that really need to be had between both practitioners, politicians, journalists, and those who study the media, academics and the like, to really think about what the future will become. Questions of policy are going to be in the news and contentious in the decades to come. In my mind, there is nothing much more important than these questions when we think about the future of the United States. The fascinating thing about media policy today and communications policy is that everything is interlinked. You can't look at questions of mobile policy, questions of how cell phones are regulated, without thinking about how journalism is funded. It's common knowledge that the profitability of newspapers is down and some have closed. If we think about the future, we need to think about how media is paid for and who is able to produce it. Historically, we've had commercial network television and some public television outlets. The emergence of cable in the 80s and 90s transformed those decades. It's quite clear that the growth and access to information that the internet has precipitated is changing industries again. There's a real opportunity to reinvigorate our media, even in these times of austerity and times of precariousness for the commercial media outlets. It's not all bad news. For decades, the questions of media policy were dominated by questions of media concentration and media ownership. because that's a primary vehicle for regulation in that the FCC has due to through statute. Latterly, that has been complemented by other issues emerging, questions of transparency about what stations produce. A very recent debate has been moving what's known as the public file. This is a file documenting what the station produces in service of the public interest, that has always been available in the station, and as of a month ago in August 2012 began to be available online alongside what's known as the political file, that records the political and issue-based advertising that has been purchased from the station. Now, these are somewhat narrow issues, but they are issues that really at the center of what media is for us. Transparency of the public file and the political file allows the ordinary citizen to really understand what the station that has the monopoly license for that spectrum does in service of its local community. If we look forward to the issues emerging in the future, I see a great opportunity to explore how community media and public broadcasting can be, I'll call it public media for the 21st century. We have an upcoming window for the licensing of low-power radio stations, which, although radio seems to be technology of the past, really have the possibility of serving many people and small groups of people, both in urban areas and in rural areas. The possibility of platforms emerging around local wireless networks and what that all can be and how that can really serve democracy. It's a very exciting time.